I never thought suspicion could feel physical until the night it wrapped itself around my chest like a tightening belt. It started quietly, almost politely, just a thought brushing against the edge of my mind. But by the time I turned off the lights in the living room, it had already begun to grow teeth. I'd always considered myself a rational man, the kind of person who doesn't jump to conclusions, who trusts what he sees and what he can confirm. But lately, what I saw and what I felt no longer matched. Something was slipping. Something in her. Something in us. Her name is Emily. My girlfriend for 3 years. She used to fall asleep on my shoulder every night, draping her hand over my chest like she was anchoring herself to me. She talked about the future like it was a project we were building together bit by bit, patiently, brick by brick. But around a month ago, something shifted. At first it was so subtle that I blamed myself for even noticing. The way she'd pull her phone closer to her chest when a notification appeared. The way she'd reply to messages a little faster, with that faint half-smile she didn't think I could see. The way she laughed quietly, softly at something on her screen and then immediately switched apps when I walked past. None of it was concrete. Nothing you could call evidence. But it piled up in small, sharp layers, like dust settling on an unused table. One day you look, and it's not dust anymore, it's a film thick enough to leave fingerprints. I didn't say anything. Not at first. I told myself she was just stressed from work, that her mood swings were normal, that her distance was temporary. And for a while, I believed it, or pretended to. But then there was last Friday. She came home late, later than usual. And she didn't come in with her usual annoyed sigh or exhausted groan. She walked in with a kind of distracted softness, her eyes unfocused, her breathing light, like she was floating through the doorway instead of stepping into it. She didn't see me immediately. She was too busy smiling at something on her phone. That smile hit me like the crack of a whip. It wasn't for me. I knew my smiles. I knew the ones she had reserved for stupid jokes I made, or for the way I kissed the top of her head when I passed by. This one was different, smaller, more private. A smile someone gives when they're holding a secret close and enjoying how warm it feels. She finally looked up and saw me in the kitchen doorway. "Oh," she said, blinking like she had been pulled out of a trance. "I didn't see you." Her voice was soft, but the edge of guilt in it cut deep. It wasn't even what she said, just a shift in her tone. The way her fingers tightened around the phone as if she had to protect it. "Late night?" I asked. She hesitated. I saw it, a half-second pause. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, but enough for something inside me to twist. "Yes," she answered. "We had a last-minute meeting." "Sorry, a meeting." "On a Friday." At 10:40 p.m. She worked in design. They had deadlines, not surgery emergencies. I nodded anyway. Okay. I wanted to believe her. God, I really did. But as she walked past me to the bedroom, I caught a faint scent. Not perfume, not alcohol. Something warm, unfamiliar. Something that didn't belong to our house or to her usual routine. Something that didn't come from staying late in an office. I stood in the kitchen long after she disappeared down the hallway, my hand resting on the back of a chair, my fingers gripping it so tightly my knuckles whitened. My instincts screamed at me, but I kept telling myself, don't jump, don't accuse, don't become that man. But I could already feel myself turning into him. That night she fell asleep almost instantly. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing. Her phone was under her pillow, a new habit she had adopted without explanation. She always used to leave it on the nightstand. I didn't touch it. I didn't dare. I wasn't ready for an answer, but I wasn't ready for the questions either. The next few days felt stretched, thin, like rubber pulled too far. She was kind to me, too kind. Overly sweet, overly gentle, overly patient. The kind of kindness someone uses when they're trying to compensate for something they know they've broken. And then there were the messages. I didn't see them. I only saw the notifications light up her screen when she left the room. A name I didn't recognize. A short preview hidden behind the phrase "one new message." She had changed her notification settings. She never used to hide the content. When she returned and noticed me looking at her phone, she casually flipped it face down. Tiny, insignificant movements if you look at them individually, but together, they formed a pattern I could no longer ignore. The real breaking point came a week later. She said she'd go grocery shopping. Quick, just an hour. I told her I'd stay home and clean up. She nodded, kissed me on the cheek, and left. And for the first time in my life, I felt a physical pull inside my chest and urge to follow. Not because I wanted to catch her, but because I needed the truth like a drowning man needs air. But I didn't follow her. Instead, I waited. An hour passed. Then two. She didn't return. The groceries she supposedly left for were never bought. When she finally came back, she carried nothing but her purse, no bags, no explanation. And on her face another one of those small, private smiles. My stomach tightened so hard it felt like my ribs were closing in on it. Forgot the groceries? I asked. She blinked, startled, then forced a laugh. I'm such an idiot, I know. I got distracted on the phone with Claire. I didn't say anything, not a word. I just nodded. But inside, something cracked, because earlier that morning, Claire had posted a story on social media. A photo of a lake outside of town with the caption, "Weekend road trip." She wasn't even in the city. Emily didn't know I had seen it. That night I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor while she brushed her teeth. My thoughts were a storm, sharp, chaotic, loud. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being paranoid. The signs were real all around me, tightening, closing in. When she joined me in bed, she rested her head on my shoulder. You okay? She asked. I wanted to tell her yes. I wanted to lie. But the truth was sitting too heavily on my chest. I'm fine, I whispered. But I wasn't. And she could feel it. Her body stiffened slightly, and she shifted away. That shift hurt more than any lie she had ever told. As she fell asleep, I stayed awake again, staring at the ceiling. The house felt different. The air, heavier. The silence, sharper. Every minute stretched, each second echoing the same cold realization. She was slipping away from me. And she wasn't doing it alone. By morning, I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep pretending not to see what was happening. The doubt wasn't a shadow anymore, it was a structure, a wall rising between us brick by brick, built from every lie, every missing detail, every forced smile. And somewhere behind that wall was the truth, a truth I felt creeping closer with every breath. I just didn't know yet that it was about to hit me harder than anything I'd faced in my life. But the first real crack, the one that would shatter everything, was already forming, and I could feel it. Growing, waiting. The days following the grocery incident pressed on me like a constant weight, the kind that doesn't crush you all at once but tightens slowly, steadily, every hour, every minute. I walked through the apartment with the sinking feeling that something invisible had rearranged the air itself. The rooms looked the same. The furniture hadn't moved. The lighting didn't change, but nothing felt like it used to. Even the sound of my own footsteps had begun to echo differently, sharper, colder. I didn't confront Emily, not because I was afraid of her reaction, but because I was afraid of the truth. When you ask a question you're not ready to hear the answer to, you're not searching, you're inviting destruction. And I knew that once I opened that door, I couldn't close it again, but the signs kept coming. And they didn't bother being polite anymore. The next co arrived on a Tuesday, sometime after 5 in the evening. I was at home early because one of my meetings was canceled. I didn't tell Emily. I figured I'd surprise her with dinner, maybe ease whatever distance had grown between us. That's what people do when they still believe they can fix things. The second I walked in, the apartment felt wrong, not messy, not disturbed, just wrong. A faint smell hung in the air, something I couldn't place. Not ours, not familiar. It wasn't cologne, it wasn't food, it wasn't perfume. Just a presence I couldn't name. I didn't want to think the thought that rushed into me. I checked the rooms. Nothing out of place. Everything exactly where we left it. Except for one thing, her bedroom chair. It was angled differently. A tiny detail, barely worth noticing, but I knew she never moved it. She hated asymmetry in the bedroom. My chest tightened. Emily came home 40 minutes later. The moment she stepped through the door, she froze only for a breath. But I saw it. Her eyes darted around the apartment like she was checking whether anything had changed, whether I had touched something I shouldn't have. Then she looked at me and switched into her soft, practiced smile. "You're home early," she said. "I finished sooner than expected." Oh, that's nice. But it wasn't nice. I could see the unease in her posture, the stiffness in her shoulders, the way she avoided looking toward the bedroom. She kissed me lightly, quickly, almost mechanically, and went to the kitchen. And as she passed me, I caught it again, the same faint scent I'd picked up when I walked in. Not hers, not mine, someone else's. My hands went cold. We made dinner together. Her talking about deadlines and annoying coworkers, me pretending to care, pretending to listen. But my mind kept drifting back to that scent, to that twisted chair, to that tiny moment of panic in her eyes when she saw me earlier than she expected. By the time we finished eating, my appetite had long disappeared. I pushed my plate aside and watched her through the reflection in the window. She was scrolling on her phone, her face illuminated by the screen, her thumb moving slowly, carefully, not like someone casually browsing, but like someone reading something private, something important. I could see the tension in her jaw, a small twitch beneath her cheekbone. That was new. "You okay?" I asked. She startled slightly, then nodded too quickly. "Fine. Just tired." She wasn't tired. Her body language screamed otherwise. But I didn't push it. Not yet. Later that night, as we lay in bed, she positioned her phone under her pillow again. I pretended not to notice. I turned away from her and stared into the dark, my pulse heavy in my throat. I didn't sleep, not even for a minute. The next morning, she left earlier than usual. Said she had a big day, but she didn't take her laptop. And she didn't pack lunch. And when she kissed me before leaving, her body leaned away from mine, not forward like it used to. As soon as the door closed, I felt something inside me snap. I needed to know, not to accuse her, not to confront her, just to understand whether the ground I was standing on was still solid, or if it had already collapsed under my feet while I was too blind to notice. So I started paying attention, actually paying attention. Not to her words, they were too easy to manipulate, but to her patterns, her habits, her inconsistencies. And the more I looked, the more everything pointed in the same direction. There was a man, somewhere in the background, and he was moving closer. That afternoon, when Emily said she was working late, I decided to test something simple, harmless on the surface. I texted her, "Thinking of picking you up tonight. What time should I come?" It took her 14 minutes to respond. "Don't worry about it. I'll Uber home." It's easier for who? I stared at her message and felt the familiar tightness return to my chest. But I didn't push back. I needed more clarity, more proof. If I confronted her now, she'd deny, twist, deflect. I knew her well enough to predict that. Emily wasn't a bad liar, but she wasn't a good one either. She relied on emotional misdirection, on making me feel guilty for asking questions she didn't want to answer. But now I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was observing. When she came home around 11 p.m., her hair was slightly messy, and her makeup, though minimal, looked like it had been touched up. Not smudged, redone, fresh. You don't redo makeup at 10:30 p.m. after a long day at work. She noticed me watching her and instantly looked away. "Long day," she said. I nodded once. "Seems like it." She swallowed hard. That night, her phone buzzed twice under the pillow. She flinched both times. By morning, I felt like I was living with a stranger. But the moment everything tipped over happened 3 days later. I remember the exact time, 9:17 p.m. Emily was in the shower, music playing faintly from her phone. I was in the living room, trying to focus on a movie I wasn't actually watching. I was exhausted from pretending everything was normal. My chest felt tight all day, like I couldn't take a full breath. Then her phone buzzed, once, twice, then again. I tried to ignore it, but the sound kept echoing in my skull. Something about the frequency of the vibrations, the urgency behind them. I didn't get up, I didn't move toward the phone, but I didn't need to. The screen lit up just enough for me to see a name, first name only. A man's, short, simple, unfamiliar, and beneath it, the preview. You got home safe. Text me when you. The rest cut off when the screen dimmed. My pulse roared in my ears. For a moment, I genuinely forgot how to breathe. Not because I saw a message, but because I saw the tone of it. Concern, intimacy, familiarity. The kind you don't share with a coworker, or a friend, or anyone who shouldn't be involved with your girlfriend. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't open it. I didn't scroll or search or invade her privacy. I didn't need to. That 6-word preview was enough to split something inside me. You got home safe. Text me when he what? Fell asleep, left, was out of the room, wasn't paying attention. Every possibility made my skin crawl. When Emily came out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, hair dripping, humming softly to whatever song played in the background, I looked at her differently, not like a partner, not like someone I trusted, but like someone hiding parts of herself from me carefully, deliberately. She grabbed her phone, glanced at the screen, and froze, just slightly, just for a second. Then she looked at me, her eyes wide. Too wide. You okay? She asked. Her voice was fragile, thin. I didn't answer. I couldn't. She waited for a moment, then walked past me without another word, the phone clutched tightly in her hand. And all I could think was, it's real. It's happening. And I'm not imagining any of it. Something was unfolding behind my back, piece by piece, lie by lie, message by message. A story I wasn't meant to see was playing out in the shadows. A story that involved my girlfriend and a man whose name I didn't know. A story that was growing stronger, bolder. A story that was beginning to seep through the cracks. That night, while she slept beside me, breathing steady and calm, I lay awake again with the same sentence replaying in my head. Text me when he. Every time I repeated it, another piece of me fell away. I knew part 3, whatever it looked like, wasn't going to be gentle. The truth was coming, and it wasn't coming quietly. I didn't know a person could become two versions of themselves in the same moment, one who keeps breathing and functioning, and another who's just watching, detached, waiting. That's what I felt like the morning after I saw the message preview on Emily's phone. Like half of me was performing the motions of living, making coffee, putting on a clean shirt, answering emails, while the other half sat in the back of my mind, silent, arms folded, waiting for the inevitable collapse. Emily acted strangely that morning. Too cheerful, too quick to move around me. She kept talking but never said anything real. Every sentence skirted around the tension between us, like she could sense the edges of something dangerous, but hoped that pretending not to see it would make it disappear. She left early again. Another busy day, another quick kiss on the cheek, another shift in her eyes, the kind that wasn't sadness or guilt. It was fear, not of me, but of something unspoken between us. The moment the door shut, the apartment felt heavier, like it had finally exhaled after holding its breath all night. I sat at the table and stared at the spot where she had placed her phone earlier. That tiny rectangle of glass and metal had become a dividing wall between us, a silent witness to whatever she was hiding. I hated myself for how much I wanted to reach for it, how easily I could have, but I didn't, not because of morality. Morality had become blurred somewhere along the way. I didn't check because I didn't want a message to confirm what my body already knew. But the preview had burned itself into my mind. You got home safe. Text me when he. Of reinterpretation twisted in my stomach like a knife handle someone kept turning. The truth wasn't a question anymore. It was a countdown. And I didn't have to wait long for the next tick. 3 days later, the crack widened. Emily said she was going for a quick drink with coworkers. It was Saturday afternoon. She didn't usually socialize with her team. I could count on one hand the number of times she'd mentioned them outside of work. But I played along, acted casual, nodded like the kind of boyfriend who doesn't cling or question. But when she walked back into the bedroom to get her jacket, she took her phone with her. She never did that. Not before. She didn't trust the silence anymore. She didn't trust me near that device. And the realization carved something deep and painful inside me. When she came out dressed, her hair carefully arranged, her shirt freshly steamed, I felt a coldness crawl across my skin. "Who's going?" I asked, forcing my tone to stay even. She hesitated. "Barely, but I caught it." "Oh, just the marketing team," she said. "And Claire might join." Claire, the same Claire who was out of town during the grocery line. I watched her face as she zipped her jacket. She avoided my eyes just a little too carefully. "Which bar?" I asked. "Not sure yet. We're deciding." Another lie. Or at least another hollow answer. She gave me a quick smile, the rehearsed kind, and left. The moment the door closed, I felt a pressure rise behind my ribs. A quiet voice inside me whispered something I didn't want to hear. "Follow her, just once. See where she really goes." I don't know if it was instinct or desperation or plain self-preservation, but I moved almost automatically, grabbed my jacket, my keys, slipped out the door as silently as possible. I kept a distance. I wasn't trying to ambush her. I wasn't even sure what I expected to find. Maybe I hoped she really was meeting coworkers, that all of this was in my head, that I could go home afterward and feel ridiculous for doubting her. But 10 minutes into following her, that hope died. She walked past the bus stop where she said she'd be meeting the team, past the cafe where she claimed they sometimes gathered before going out, past everything that made sense. And then she stopped. Her phone buzzed. She looked down at it, smiled in that same quiet, private way I'd seen before, and turned down a side street that led nowhere near any bar or restaurant. My heart hammered so loudly in my ears I almost missed the next part. A man stepped out from behind a parked car. Tall, dark jacket, hands in pockets, the kind of posture a person has when they're waiting for someone they know intimately. Emily's face lit up instantly, not with guilt, not with fear, but with familiarity. With recognition, with a softness I hadn't seen directed at me in months. She approached him quickly, like she'd been holding her breath until she saw him. He said something I couldn't hear. She laughed, light, real, spontaneous. He reached out and touched her arm. Casual, comfortable, natural, like he'd done it many times before. She didn't pull away. She didn't even flinch. I felt my body go cold from the inside out. It wasn't shock. It wasn't anger. It was something deeper, something primal and hollowing like grief, but sharper. But the worst part was that they didn't act like two people sneaking around. They acted like two people who had a routine, who had met this way before. The man leaned closer, said something else, and her shoulders relaxed. She looked safe with him, safe in a way she no longer did with me. She glanced around once, not nervously, but habitually. Her eyes passed over me without recognizing me, either because I was too far away or because she wasn't expecting me to be anywhere near that street. The man put his hand on her back, guiding her gently as they began walking together. That small gesture, simple, unconscious, hit me harder than anything else. It meant history, familiarity, closeness. I couldn't move for a moment. I just stood there in the shadow of a doorway, my breath caught somewhere between my lungs and throat, unable to decide whether I wanted to scream or collapse. They turned the corner, and I followed, carefully, slowly, far enough not to be seen, close enough not to lose them. They walked side by side, their shoulders brushing occasionally. She tilted her head toward him when he spoke. He laughed softly at something she said. Every step felt like something sharp was grinding deeper into my chest. They stopped again near a small cafe. Not a bar, not a workplace hangout spot. A private, quiet place tucked away from everything else. And then something happened that I wasn't prepared for. He placed his hand on her waist, softly, naturally, with a confidence that didn't belong to a stranger. And she didn't push it away. She didn't move. She didn't stiffen. She just stood there, letting his hand rest on her like it belonged there. My vision blurred at the edges, not from tears. I wasn't crying. It was something else. Something like realization finally catching up with me in full force. This wasn't a moment. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern, a relationship, a connection that had been growing behind my back while I tried to pretend everything was fine. The truth wasn't knocking anymore. It had kicked the door down. They walked inside the cafe. The door closed behind them, and I was left standing on the sidewalk, staring at the reflection of my own face in the glass, looking like someone who didn't recognize the life he was living. I didn't go in, not because I didn't want to, but because I suddenly realized I had crossed the point of no return. The truth wasn't coming anymore. It was here. And whatever I decided to do next would define everything that followed. I took a step back, then another. My hands shook. My breath came in uneven, broken pulls. I had found the evidence I feared, the proof I never wanted, the moment that split my life into before and after. And as I stood there, frozen on that quiet street, I understood there is no way out of this without breaking something, her trust, my dignity, or the last pieces of whatever we once were.